Most people don't care about the deep analytics, let's be honest.
Disinformation is at the cost of potentially that can lead up to even a more catastrophic war.
That's the key to ensuring that we ourselves are held accountable.
What was kind of the key factors of making that transition and that decision?
In terms of, has it been worth doing? Has it been worthwhile? It's difficult because we have so many different goals. I think our primary metric has always been, let's get as many people on our app as possible. They just want to read the news for 5 minutes maximum 5 minutes. American ones are definitely privatized.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody, and welcome to the Caravan Podcast. Today, we're here with the helm of NewsCord. Is that right?
Yes, yeah.
Awesome.
Assalamu alaikum. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for joining us. We're here in London, continuing with Muslim Tech Week here. Alhamdulillah, it's been a really great time. It's a little bit steamy here in London, even though we're Texas boys, so I apologize for the little bit of drip on my forehead. So, but we're staying hydrated, alhamdulillah. But yeah, with that, we'll go ahead and get started. News, like that is a controversial in nature to start off with. And I'm kind of curious on when it comes to the whole journey of your experience of getting into media. Was that always there, or did it just kind of spark?
To be honest, I guess I'm somewhat ashamed to admit it, but leading up to the back end of 2023, I didn't even care that much about politics, about media, about news. I was just kind of living my life, practicing my deen, but also climbing up the career ladder. I was a data scientist. And then, quickly, I kind of went in straight from 18 years old. So I didn't go to college or university. I was an apprentice. I was at telecoms, and then I went out the ranks, got better at my job, and just kind of immersed myself in that in most ways. So I became, quite very technically adept. But when October 2023 happened, and the genocide that came off the back of that, that's when I felt so helpless, as I'm sure so many Muslims around the world, so many people around the world, because I think this goes beyond the ummah. This is a humanity issue now. I just felt helpless. I didn't know what to do. And I was thinking, I've got the skills of coding and whatever. How can I, in this new world that we're in, where AI is becoming more and more prevalent, how can I combine these skills into doing something good? And trying to solve one huge problem, which I think is the media and the way the media has portrayed Muslims for the past, several decades, specifically how they've controlled the narrative of Israel, of Palestine, and try to correct that, try to expose it at scale. So that's what NewsCord is trying to do. So I never really wanted to be in media. I didn't care that much, but I think it forces you. I think certain things that happen, it forces you to immerse yourself in it. And I think we all should be. I think we all should be caring a great deal about what's going on to our brothers and sisters in Palestine, because I think it affects all of us. And actually so many things are connected to that. So many problems around the world
Absolutely.
are connected to that region. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so did you start this essentially around October, around that time then, or was it a little bit before?
No, it was literally a month after.
Wow.
So, you can imagine if you take yourself back to between October and November 2023.
Yeah.
You saw, and I think people that are aware of the history there, they knew what would happen off the back of October 7th and the aggression and the brutality and just the way they would come into Gaza. Obviously, I don't think anyone expected it. If it's still to be going on 20 months later, almost 21 months later. But yeah, I think, we saw in just 30 days that the death toll was just mounting so quickly. These numbers just became statistics. Mm-hmm. People forgot that these are humans. It was 10,000. I don't know how quickly it became 10,000 people killed. So then it was kind of okay, how why is the world not up in arms about this? Why is the world not angry about this? And then you look at the BBC, you look at CNN, Associated Press, and the way they're watering it down, sanitizing it, justifying it, dehumanizing the Palestinians. Then you realize, okay, this could be why. This is what the world is seeing. You walk into the office buildings, the TVs, it's Sky News, it's CNN, BBC, and it's all just this watered down rubbish. So that's kind of when I realized, okay, let's make something. And actually, where it all started was Dean Developers. I'm not sure if you know them.
Oh yes, yeah. They're holding an event. I think later today.
Yeah. Are you gonna be there?
Inshallah.
We're gonna try to,
Inshallah.
inshallah.
Same, nice. So they hosted an event called Hack for Gaza in November.
Okay.
And essentially it was a bunch of teams trying to build products to help the Palestinians, or help it on a micro scale. So you had people that were working on setting up eSIMs, or being able to facilitate that. That was one team, and then a bunch of teams focusing on boycotting and BDS.
Right.
And that's around when that became a big focus. But I thought, okay, let me get a few of my friends together, combine our skill sets, and build something potentially tougher, which is to tackle news, because it's the media class is so powerful, it's so strong, it's hard to break into that space.
And it's constant production.
Yeah,
right? Yeah,
exactly. And the money that these guys have is so hard to compete with. The domination, the distribution is just on another level. But yeah, this is us trying to slowly chip away at it. And I think it first began with something quite modest, which is just let's just use AI to compare one article versus the other when we know they're talking about the same thing.
Right.
That's essentially the core of NewsCord, and then highlight the differences automatically. We're now doing that at a huge scale across multiple languages. We'll be comparing CNN Espanol with even CNN English, and you'll see the differences there, which is always interesting. But now we're thinking the next level really is let's try to be a huge player in the media class. Let's change the media. Why does the BBC, after 20 months of sanitizing war crimes, still get to be the dominant news outlet in the UK? That shouldn't be the case. We shouldn't just accept that. Why can't we, as the new generation, as people, not just make news for Muslims, but make news for the world? I think that's what. That's that mindset we need to change now, is let's build for the world, beyond the ummah, for everyone. And the good thing about that is, because we're the ones building it, we're building it with all of the right intentions. We're building with ihsan as well. We're building, to have an excellent product. And I think there's a lot of complacency right now, especially in the media class, where they just push out an article, they don't care, they prioritize the clicks. It's not really journalism anymore. So we can bring that. There's that huge gap in the market now.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of things that you brought up. Just a quick bit on the camera check here. Okay. Yeah, just one of the things that you brought up that I thought was two things that you brought up. One is the incentivization and this whole process of news drastically changed after Reagan, at least in the U.S., where you had where news and media was essentially not privatized as it is now. And so there is a standardization that happens when it's public news, at least, where PBS, for example, in the US, right? Where now that it is privatized, you are incentivized by capitalistic models of how much money you can bring in, right? And so sometimes that maximizes on even disinformation, right? What can get the most amount of clicks, and then just clean it up later. The issue with that is that you don't know if the people that read the disinformation will get updated. Case in point, when President Biden in the previous term, with the report of the 40 babies, right, which was debunked even from Israeli sources, and the debunk happened almost immediately after President Biden with a press conference, saying it, and the White House corrected it by not saying it in front of the White House, but by just releasing a blog post, right? How many people actually updated themselves and read the blog post, right? But what would get more clicks, right? Yeah. What would get more clicks? But at this point, this disinformation is at the cost of potentially that can lead up to even a more catastrophic war. How do you build a safeguard that maintains this level of credibility, right, of ethics beyond you, right? Because inshallah, NewsCord continues on beyond you, and because I'm sure you want to retire one day, right, and all those fun things. How do you maintain that standardization?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think with standardization and ensuring that, I guess, we're held accountable for the stuff we produce, it's all about transparency. So I think naturally what NewsCord does is inherently transparent, because we aggregate loads of sources and we put it into one place. So then if there's 5 sources pushing out misinformation potentially, or later debunked, all the other sources that are now debunking it are all in one place, so you can see all of it in like centrally. Whereas right now, because of the fast flowing nature of information that we just scroll through, and the doom scrolling and all of that, you're completely right. You see what Biden says, you move on, you never come back to that topic, but it stays in your head, right? You remember that, and you never see the follow-up. But if everything is in one place where people are repeatedly going back to that centralized location where everything is made transparent, then I think that's the that's the key. That's the key to ensuring that we ourselves are held accountable.
So I think in terms of updating it and making sure leaders are following it, right? In terms of like your hiring process, when you're expanding the team, what is that process like?
Yeah, that's a good question, because obviously this is all new to us. It's been 2 years now. It's been volunteer run in the beginning. I myself as a founder have learned so much, because in the beginning I didn't know really how to, because I'm a technical founder, right? I didn't really know how to delegate, how to let people just own something and run with it. I would always just, like, if I saw that they're not doing the best job possible, I would just go and finish it off. But that's not a nice feeling for that person. So that's bad leadership, actually. It's taken 2 years, but I feel like now we've grown to a point where we have a small team of volunteers, which obviously is a bit different to having like full-time employees. I think that leadership style changes, and then the way you interview changes. Right now, because we're volunteer run, I think, alhamdulillah, it's a lot easier to ensure that we've got the right people, because they only want to work with us because they believe in the mission so much. They see the content we're producing, they see the app we have and the purpose of it, and they want to be a part of it. So immediately we're already speaking only with people that have the right intentions, and I think that's the most important thing. And then secondly is kind of everything else is really addressable. Like, let's say, for example, I get a content creator, someone that writes the posts. Let's say, their copy, the way they write the text needs to change a little bit. We have like our own style guide. That can all be learnt. As long as they have the passion and they share the same vision as us, that's all we need, really. And then we're golden.
That makes sense. It's kind of almost self-fulfilling, right? People who are already following and tracking along wants to be part of the mission that's driving it. Now, I want to take a step back here, because you mentioned that you're a technical founder, right? And going into media, there is a lot of important diction, right? How you say something, what type of words that you use, and things like that. Obviously, did you find yourself going into this endeavor weak in that area, and then you tried to find co-founders that were, English speaking background, or like an English major perchance, or how did you navigate knowing your weaknesses going into this space?
Yeah, and I think I do have I guess you wouldn't call him a co-founder per se, but he's been there from day one, and I guess he has that lens of, I guess, product vision, not even necessarily journalist or, that kind of person that's adept in media. I think that came over time. I think in the beginning we had no clue what we were doing. But I guess essentially it is easier than pure writing news articles, because we're just comparing news. So then we it's almost like we have the CNN news article already published. We have a Al Jazeera one already published, and we just compare it. So in terms of journalism and speaking and writing, it's a bit easier. Now we are getting into more deep dives and actually breaking down the news and actually doing analysis and commentary. That's where we are able to do that now, because we're connected with journalists, we're connected with incredibly talented, they're on the same mission as us, but they are journalists and they've done it for years, sometimes in mainstream media and corporate media, but they've obviously given up on it and left it, like ex-BBC and so on. And those people are really good for advice, and they tell you the right style, the right way to write things. And yeah, it's been incredible having those people in our network. And I think building that network out is really the next phase, and that's the phase we're in right now, where we're connected with all these amazing people. They're helping us, inshallah we're helping them too, and we're just building this community of we all know the right things to say, when to say it, and it's almost just grow from there and scale.
That's actually interesting. Like I'm thinking about it from a solution standpoint, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, but basically what I'm hearing is you're looking at it from a couple angles. One is that, hey, how does CNN compared in different regions, right? So they might report something in one area versus another, and your analysis, assuming it's correct, has some weight that it attributes to it, and then lets you know like the accuracy of CNN in itself, or BCC, or whatever news organization. And then you're also taking that same information and then comparing it to another news source. So that has another weight associated with it. So it's kind of interesting. Is that did I get like the rough idea of the concept of the solution? Because I think that's very similar to like a neural net, right? Like you're basically coming up with all these different weights and figuring out like, hey, how do all these correlate to determine like what we would consider like the articulation of the version of truth, and then you're inputting the definitions somehow, right? So is that like a decent view?
Think so.
Or
it's pretty accurate. I think that's essentially I guess you could call it the consumer facing solution that we have for everyone to download is the app, and the app does that on the fly. Like let's say there's an article today about Israel attacking Iran. It will be 63 news sources reporting on it. You click on it on the app, and then it shows you, okay, CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera. Like it will break it down by source type. So one source type is Western mainstream. Then you've got Western alternatives such as Middle East Eye, Democracy Now, and so on and so forth. And then you've got West Asian sources, Al Jazeera, and so on and so forth. And then so all over the world, and then it shows you the biggest coverage differences in real time. So it says, okay, the narrative is slightly different here, where the CNN is focusing on Israel attacking military targets, but Al Jazeera or an Iranian media outlet is saying, actually, there's been a lot of civilian casualties, which is buried all the way at the end of the Associated Press article. So we try to surface all of that in real time, but also as well as that, we give you a condensed article that combines
all of it.
All of it. So you're reading the article, but then there'll be like little arrows along the journey that
like
says
citations almost.
Exactly.
That's
Yeah. So that's the solution. That's the core of it. I think we've kind of gone. There's been so many journeys beyond that now. I was kind of trying
to back up just at the beginning, right? Because that's kind of like you have information and credibility, it's just insight. Not that you're necessarily sharing this with all your consumers just yet, but you have the ability, like the infrastructure layer for this stuff, right? And then, so that's very interesting. And then you kind of take it like you said, the next layer, which is essentially like, hey, how do we connect with all these different journalists to support what we think is truth, right? And that's a very like complex topic that I don't necessarily want to get too deep into, but like fundamentals of like who defines what truth is and what is it, like you have your view of like what bias is, and obviously like we come from similar backgrounds, so we understand it, but just from an agnostic like individual, like the definition of truth is very it's not supposed to be subjective, but depending on the source that you get it from today, it's very subjective. There's definitely a bias. So how do you like tackle that aspect of it? And maybe that feeds into like, okay, we have this desire to work with true journalists, and maybe it's like a crowdsourcing of information from journalists that really care, boots on ground. Maybe talk a little bit about that, like that middle layer step.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think so far, in terms of showing the truth, we've actually not tried to do that, because I think defining truth, as you say, is complex, and everyone's going to disagree with you. And the best way to reach potentially the layperson, because as you said, yourselves and myself, we're going to be aligned on what we see the truth to be, but the layperson may, because of their past biases and growing up a certain way, they may reject that truth, and they would like to side with the truth that's more, the side that's more comfortable, the reality that's easier to face. So in order to make this as easy and as objective as possible, we just show the differences. We say, look, these guys are saying the civilians were killed, but these guys are saying military targets, and so on. There's a difference here. You do with that what you will. Like, at least now we just want to empower people to see it all in one place, because I think so far, and this is what mainstream like Western media relies on, is that their information is really easy to access. It's so accessible, but actually the others you really need to search for. You need to have already unlocked that awareness. So that's what we're just trying to do. We're trying to centralize it, just see the difference, and then it's down to you to decide what the truth is. And I think, and maybe this is optimistic of me, but I think humanity, as the entire world, often they will see that, okay, this is, now that I can see everything, now that I have all of the pieces, I can make a decision to know what's right and what's wrong. It's almost like the concept of having a jury, right? Is, once they can see both sides, they make a decision and say this party is guilty. But if they're only seeing the side from the prosecutor, then they're going to be swayed one way. So, yeah, that's essentially the crux of it. Now, with mainly because of our social media growth, where it really just started off as, let's screenshot our findings and put it on Instagram. So let's show the world that, look, we're using our own product and it's really valuable. But then now we kind of went down, the side mission of let's make it really fancy on Canva, and it went beyond that. And now we're effectively just telling the news on Instagram, which people like, and they enjoy the added layer we're giving them. But as a result of that, we're now connected to tons of, incredible people, journalists that are on the right mission, that are actually trying to deliver the news. And now it's a case of, working with them to give them our data from behind the scenes to see if we can empower them to do potentially stuff like investigative journalism more easily. Because I think AI in journalism is a new thing, obviously. I think we can be at the forefront of that and awesome. Try to drive that forward. Yeah.
No, man, mashallah, man, that's awesome. It's for sure, I think it's a known and recognized problem in, different minority groups across the globe. Particularly in Western countries. So the problem is for sure there, but I really respect the approach that you have, and it sounds like a very sound solution that's definitely worth testing. And then I think like you kind of brushed on it a little bit, but like what you were doing with your Instagram posts and your insights, it's kind of like the early form of validation, right? You didn't really necessarily need to get your product out to everyone, but the algo or whatever analysis you were doing is kind of, I see that as like, okay, here's the results. Let's see what people think about it, and if it's good, great. Like we'll keep doubling down, right? And if it's not so good, then we got to go back and absolutely. People might not be able to digest it. So I think I see that as early validation. So actually, let's talk a little bit about this, because I think I was interested in this too, because I saw some of those Instagram posts, and you did make that transition from like where it was like, hey, here's my product, here's the results, and then now it's a little bit more. I don't want to say fancy, but a little bit like a news. It does seem like a little bit more like a news outlet. So what was kind of the key factors of making that transition and that decision? Do you think it's been valuable? Is it still TBD? Like where's your analysis on that, and how does that attribute to like your long-term strategy and goal?
Yeah, so I think in terms of has it been worth doing, has it been worthwhile, I would think so. I think it's difficult because we have so many different goals. I think our primary metric has always been let's get as many people on our app as possible. I think it's difficult to do that because not everyone recognizes that this is a problem and that they need to have a way of dissecting information easily. I think most people say, I've got my source, I'm going to stick with it. So making people download the app is difficult, and that's always been the goal. And obviously just logically is like, let's create a funnel where social media is the top of the funnel, millions of people see it, and then we try to trickle it down to encourage people to download the app. That's been, to be honest, a very slow journey. It's been difficult to say, okay, look, I know you're on Instagram right now, you're probably doom scrolling. How about you just quickly go on our link in bio and install the app? That's a difficult thing to do if you don't sell it right. And obviously we've got all the analytics and stuff. But essentially the strategy was, okay, let's just keep growing the top of the funnel. Ultimately, we're here on a mission, and we want to reach as many people as possible. So let's play the long game. We know that our app is the end goal because we're free of the social media algorithms. Because let's be honest, if your entire product is reliant on social media, I think that's really risky, especially when you're covering something like the Gaza genocide, where you've got, you've got big tech who have been facilitating the perpetrators of the genocide, and big tech are the ones that control social media. So it's a very precarious position we've put ourselves in. That's why I want people to be on the app, and I think the app can become that place. But for now, we grow that funnel, we do the fancy edits to try to get more people, and that absolutely does make an impact. Like, you get more impressions that way, the algorithm likes it, and then, inshallah, as you grow your audience, people will recognize you for your brand, and then they would want to download your app and support your mission.
Oh, that's awesome. The other question I have is, by the way, I just want to be clarify. I didn't mean any disrespect by fancy edits. I'm like a builder type of guy, so like anything, it's very easy to impress me with fancy stuff.
Well, it's better to say fancy edits and crappy edits. So
That's true. Yeah,
so I'll take it.
That's a compliment.
Yeah.
And I would probably say it either way.
Your average edits are doing quite well on traction.
No, it's cool. It's cool. It's something I think we can learn from, honestly. No, so like one really big assumption that you kind of hit on right now, which I was thinking the same thing when I was looking into this product, was, you know, like I guess understanding the customer profile or the potential customer profile and their preferences. And so let me kind of expand on that. What I mean, which is, you know, you're going to have some people that are more than likely interested in understanding, like on the pursuit of truth, right? They're like, okay, let me see what this is saying. Let me see what this is saying. Oh, this tool, I kind of summarize it from well. Then you have a lot of people, I'm assuming, right? You have a handful of people that are, hey, I'm only going to listen to BCC. I'm only going to listen to Fox News. I'm only going to listen to CNN. I'm only going to listen to MSNBC, whatever, right? Like, I'm not that familiar with the news channels here, but you get what I'm saying, right? Like, so like, do you have some information on those validations of like, what do the general populace want? And is it broken down by region? Is it like how are you like in terms of like validating that side of the assumption? Like, are you finding that more people just want to stick with one news source and it's very hard to make them convert? What's your thought process there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the majority of people, and to be honest, it was me 2 years ago, so I'm not going to sit on a high horse now. Like, you just read the headline and move on, right? Very surface level. You kind of, a lot of the times you see the headline, you don't really bother to understand more. You make some assumptions up in your head and you move on. So yeah, the majority of people, they don't care about comparing the sources and seeing the intricate differences. They just want to read the news for 5 minutes maximum 5 minutes. That's why we've slowly pivoted our app to just kind of do exactly that. 3 bullet points per story, just keep swiping. We've even tried to do like behavioral tricks, like implement a TikTok reel format where you just swipe endlessly, and we've seen engagement increase because of that. If we look at our app analytics, the people that have installed it, they all, the vast majority of them, they just want to read the news in a summarized way, which is why I think, okay, fine, that is fair enough, but let's at least make sure that those points we give you are the truth, and they are, well, I say the truth is the full perspective. It brings us in as many as possible, as opposed to you just reading the BBC where the headline doesn't even name the perpetrator, where everything is written in passive voice. That's not what the reader needs to see. They need to see, this is what's happened, this is why you should care, move on. So I guess we've slowly adapted to what the validation we've seen, which is, yeah, most people don't care about the deep analytics. Let's be honest. They don't care about, you know, what style of what technique was used in this headline. Is it passive? Is it active? You know, what are the emissions? What are the manipulative techniques? No, they just want to read it at a surface level. But just let's make sure that surface level is really good.
It's correct. And,
exactly.
And, yeah. No, that's interesting. So that's like the consumer side, and then you kind of, I don't know where you are in the journey for this, right? But kind of has I wouldn't say B2B, but it's kind of weird to say that, but in this sense, but basically like a really good customer profile is, hey, journalists that are already trying to find truth. They already have the motive. They already have the ethos, and that's what true journalism is, right? At least like when I've spoken to some people that are journalists, they're like, in the pursuit of not influencing their own perspective to what they're finding, right? And that's like weird to say now in news, right? Because that's pretty much all it is. It's like a little bit more entertainment, but it's like going back to like real journalism. And so that category, whether it's like a independent news outlet or it's an individual journalist that's like seeing it, that's kind of like I'm seeing as like your primary customer base. Is that would you agree with that? And what's your thoughts on that, right? Like how they would kind of, the way I see it is they would use your application to help understand the biases and how to figure out where they need to go next on their journey for the pursuit of that truth.
Truth, yeah. Yeah, I think so. And I guess it's interesting because I've always found that there are two types of people. I guess what we just spoke about were the vast majority, right? But then there will be the few percent that are now hooked in and they want to see every single intricate detail, all of the differences, all of the biases at play. And actually, this kind of brings me on to the next part of what we're doing, which is, okay, we've got all of these differences on the fly at a mass scale. Obviously, what's driving all of that? We've got tons of data now. We've got an absolute gold mine of hundreds of thousands of articles where we've tagged it with all of this metadata, where we've said the CNN headline problematic for this reason, and so on and so forth. I feel like I keep picking on the CNN. I feel bad now. Let's say Associated Press.
They all have their own version of bias, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
From what. Well, at least from my own personal bias, right? Like from what I see, it's like they all have their own bend and angle at it, and there's a unifying theme, of course. But
well, they all have incentives, right? I mean, especially when they're all like publicly traded companies. So in terms of pleasing their shareholders, who's their demographic, appealing to that, and then also on
slight correction: are they publicly traded? I think some of these are privately owned media sources, right?
I
don't know if you know that.
Worth checking, actually. Can you check that?
American ones are definitely privatized. I don't think they are publicly traded. But I guess, the Murdoch owned ones, there's a lot of personal profit from that as well. But none of Murdoch's news outlets are publicly traded. Right?
Well, I guess he's incentivized to have certain narratives because by indirect to other public companies that could swing trades.
Absolutely.
But I guess even countries, right, who own different, I guess Middle East today is owned by Qatar, is it? Or
which one? The Middle East?
Or Middle East Eye, or which one?
Middle East Eye is... Well, Middle East Eye operates in the UK. In terms of who funds them, I'm not entirely sure. Obviously, Al Jazeera is Qatari funded.
Gotcha, that's right. Yeah.
You've got the BBC, which is like kind of public, but not really. It's like everyone in the UK that has a TV should pay every year to fund the BBC, and I think they get their money from other places as well. But it's effectively like a public state-run.
Okay.
But not really. They wouldn't accept that term, state-run media, but they kind of are. I think absolutely, you're right. Like all of these media outlets, there is a vested interest, and absolutely it shows. That's why their coverage is the way it is, because ultimately they are serving colonial interests. Yeah. They're serving the interests of the Western Empire, and they need to protect that. So there's a rhyme and reason for why, they're 20 months into a genocide, we're still not even seeing the bare minimum, which is to name the perpetrator, the bare minimum, which is to say this child was killed instead of, found dead. Like, this the basic things we're still not seeing. And absolutely, that's why they're protecting all of these vested interests. And in terms of the people that are now, they feel like they need to do something about this, or they feel like what's the next step? Because obviously the one side of NewsCord is just a solution and empowering people to see everything in one place. But the next stage is actually action. Like, why is this happening? Let's quantify how bad this is. Because right now, the media outlets are kind of getting away with it because we're just showing them anecdotal evidences, and it's kind of case-by-case basis. And sometimes they'll reply to actually people that complained off the back of the content we produce, and they say, oh, fair enough, we'll change the headline. That's happened. Sky News.
I did not know that was a thing that you can even do.
Yeah, so... Yeah, you can contact these media outlets and they will let you know,
like, hey, so if I see something that I know is relatively like biased or wrong or have a different view, you can contact them and say, hey, like, just so you're aware, like this is, I didn't know do that. That's interesting.
I mean, American outlets, we've tried with them. We've not had very much. Yeah, we've just been ignored the whole time.
Not a lot of success.
Yeah, with BBC and Sky, they do respond quite consistently, actually. I mean, most of the time they just dismiss it and they explain why. But sometimes, Sky News, they changed a YouTube headline because of a campaign we ran where we actually partner up with Accountable Media, who is an incredible group of people who have now created a website where you can set up a complaint campaign against a media outlet, and they use their technology to rephrase each complaint so that, and then you just press a button, like you put in your details, and it sends it to all the relevant email addresses of that news outlet, and they have a really high success rate of people, of these news outlets responding, not with American outlets. We need to crack that. We're working with accountable media on how exactly we can get people to take action against American media and actually get a meaningful response. But yeah, they definitely respond. It's just a case of now, okay, people are aware. This is almost going back to the funnel. We're reaching people, they're aware, they're taking action, that by complaining, most of the time they dismiss it, but it's because it's anecdotal evidence. I think anecdotal evidence is very dismissible. It's like, okay, fine, yeah, this headline, yeah, maybe you have a point, we'll change it. It's not causing an actual change long term. That's where reports come in, like quantitative analysis, and this is the new thing we're embarking on, and it's only doable because of what runs our app. Our app, needs so much data to run. It does all the comparisons, it aggregates all of the sources. This is all in a database, and we can now turn that into numbers. So instead of just saying, okay, for this specific story, there are XYZ manipulative techniques, these are the coverage differences, but actually now let's do that on a mass scale across thousands of articles. So that's the kind of work we're starting to do now. We're saying, okay, Al Jazeera, CNN, BBC, The Guardian, all four of you have collectively reported on 600 stories, where like all four of you absolutely, like, to make it an even playing field, all four of you reported on the 600 news pieces. What are the differences? Like, how many times is your headline passive? Mm-hmm. So then now it's objective comparisons.
Right.
So out of 600, how many times is your headline passive? How many times have you named the perpetrator? In your article, how many words do you dedicate to the Palestinian perspective versus the Israeli perspective? How many times do you, as a percentage, justify a Palestinian casualty immediately with like an Israeli spokesperson saying we were targeting XYZ? So this is now the next level. This is now where it gets to the point where, this is undeniable. These are statistics.
You can give objective facts.
It's objective.
Right.
You can't dismiss it because
you can't get gaslit by it, right?
Exactly, yeah. And we've even compared it to your colleagues over at The Guardian, over at CNN.
Right.
These are your counterparts. And Al Jazeera in many ways is there as like a control to say, okay, this is kind of where it could be if you were to objectively say Al Jazeera's kind of seemingly been the fairest for the case of the Gaza genocide, where they have given a lot more word count to the Palestinian perspective. And I think that metric specifically, I think, is one of the most important ones, because there's no reason to, especially given that the vast majority of these articles are about Israeli attacks on Palestine, there's no reason for there to be more words count dedicated to the perpetrator versus the victim. Mm-hmm. Like, this is a case of dehumanization, because then they just become the others. They become statistics.
Well, I mean, like, the process of Orientalism, right, is happening for a very, very long time, right? Which is, the Western realm is, civilized and taken control of, right? And then anything Eastern is, they need the Western help, right? Yeah. That's essentially the narrative for a very, very long time. I mean, one of the things I do want to rewind back on is you kind of mentioned of not being super dependent on one medium, right? Not just being on Instagram, especially when it comes to these types of topics. One of our Dallas locals, Supi, I'm sure you're probably familiar with, but he had almost 2 million followers and was probably the loudest voice on social media and TikTok about the Palestinian struggle for a very, very long time. And so his account got banned, right? And he had 2 million followers, high engagement and everything. And even when he tried to abide by the rules that Instagram had set, his previous content, right, that was still running would keep getting flagged, and eventually his account got banned. And I think being able to have a platform, what you're doing, and trying to make that migration over is going to be critical, because it's, quite apparent and clear that if you're not within the bounds of a particular diction of how you're saying the news, you're not going to be considered the news, right? And I think even with The Cradle, right? I don't know if you're familiar with them, but I believe they got banned from Instagram as well. Have you heard of The Ground News before? Do you know if they got acquired or not, by chance?
Well, so real quick, before you answer that, I'm maybe a little bit ignorant to what Ground News is, and I'm sure some people on the our speakers don't know. So maybe if you give a little bit.
So Ground News was a Instagram group that I still follow and I really like, but I'm curious if they got acquired or not. But what Ground News does was essentially is the way they started was on Instagram, and they would show like a really trending, popular topic that's going around the news, right? So I'll just give some examples here. So let's just say, President Trump wins the election, right? And then that will be the post. And then it'll show a life bar, more or less. And it'll be 3 parts. One is how many left-leaning news sources have talked about it. Then it would be the middle, which is grayed out, which would be what are unbiased. So like Associated Press, for example, but those types of news sources, how many of them have spoken about it? And then on the right side would be red, and it would tell you how many right-leaning news sources have spoken about it. So if it's, let's say, Trump wins the presidency, everyone's talking about it. But let's say, vaccines are super duper effective, right? Generally, right-leaning media wouldn't want to talk about that. So it'd be like left-leaning, and gray would be like 70% of left-leaning news places have spoken about it, but not a lot of right-leaning. So immediately gives you a snapshot as a consumer of information of like what realm is actually speaking about these things. And it was a really good way to highlight how information is shared in different avenues, particularly to a specific type of audience, right? And so that's essentially a little bit of background of Ground News. And they've become quite successful. I think they have, I forget how many followers they have now, but they have quite a lot.
Thank you.
Sorry. Does that do it? Okay. So yeah, I'm curious about, do you know if they got acquired or not? I can look it up if you don't know.
I have no clue. I mean, I'm aware of them. They seem to spend a lot on marketing. Like they're on a lot of YouTube videos and stuff. So, I think, they've been around for a few years. In terms of, have they been acquired? I don't know. But I think what we're doing is different to that. They're similar, and a lot of people do give me that. It's like, oh, is it a bit like Ground News? And I guess it is in the sense that we're aggregating. Yeah. But the way we compare news is completely different. Like, we don't necessarily care about left-leaning, right-leaning. I mean, we've seen it doesn't matter if they're, I guess Associated Press is considered central. It's
considered centered, yeah.
And then you've got, is CNN considered left?
Left-leaning, yeah.
And then you got Fox News on the right.
Right-leaning.
In terms of,
Well, CNN is quote-unquote a little bit more in the middle.
Okay, sure.
What's a good,
but it's not in the Associated Press.
MSNBC is left, but it's all the same.
What's a good left one in
MSNBC?
The US?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
MSNBC.
Yeah.
In the UK is the Guardian.
Okay.
And they've got presence in the US as well. Have you heard of
Yeah.
Okay. But when it comes to the case of the genocide, they're all on the same. They're all spewing out the same rubbish.
Right.
Like it's this like hegemony of like we're united on this.
Yeah.
So this is why immediately that was not even a thought for us to like break it down by that. Instead, what we've broken it down by is like where the outlet is from. So that's why we have like the categories: Western mainstream, Western alternative, Asian, West Asian, and so on. And actually, we might start doing stuff like that where we say, like, we make Instagram posts where we say, okay, for this story, 40% of the sources covering it are Western mainstream. But as I say, it's a bit copying that idea of Ground News, but instead of the political leaning, focusing on the
like a global perspective.
Yeah. Hey, this was the source of
Yeah. I mean, the app already does it. There's like a pie chart for every news story. Yeah, go on. Sorry.
I mean, no, I was gonna say, like, it's very interesting, right? Like, it's basically just, I mean, like, I know the pursuit and desire for this application, but at the end of the day, what you're really just doing is, hey, let's give people the ability to make their own decisions and just give them the insights behind the data. And it sounds like it's more like a visibility play in the beginning, to, I guess, like you keep mentioning this top funnel piece, right? Like, let's just get people familiar with like the type of information that's valuable here. And I think this is very interesting. I think it's a pretty good approach, honestly. And I think when you were explaining Ground News, that was that sounded very similar, but it also, I can tell how it's different. Maybe you can expand on that a little bit. Like, how is Ground News particularly different? There's some features that I think you can might be good to use, but like, how would you say that yours is a little bit different, other than like the labeling mechanism that we just discussed? Yeah.
So that's one difference. I think. Also, by the way, like with Ground News, I do respect them because they've been doing it for years now. And it's a very well executed product, I would say. Like the website's really nice, the app is really nice, and maybe this is what most people need is the blind spots, show you the left leaning, right leaning blind spots, and then the headlines all in one place. They don't actually give you an article as far as I'm aware. They just give you all of the headlines. You click each headline to go on and see the full article from the individual sources. What we do is we actually have all of the articles and we create a new article, a condensed one, and then we also show you the differences within the articles. So it's a lot more, I would say, hands-on. That's another, I would say, key difference. Another thing we do, and actually maybe Grand News does this as well, is we look at other languages too, and we translate everything to English, Hispanic, Arabic, Farsi, so on and so forth. And I think that actually is a powerful feature in itself, because potentially, for example, Al Jazeera Arabic is completely inaccessible to a person that grew up in England or in America. They just wouldn't go on it. They're like, I'm not bothered to translate every article. That's too time consuming. Even if they're the most well-intentioned, hyper-aware person, they wouldn't do it. But actually, with NewsCord, it's all there in one place, so you don't even need to think about it. So that's maybe another difference. But I need to fact check that one.
Yeah, no, but that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think the nice thing with yours is that, or like a really important differentiator, is that I think Ground News, when it was made, was really focused on tackling the American news issue, right? Which is these echo chambers that clearly exist in America, right? When you have voting happen very split 50-50, right? So, and almost very different realities. And that comes down to the information that we're reading. I think with NewsCord, what's like very unique is that it is a global focus, right? In terms of where this information is coming from regionally, but also not just, I guess, not just US only, not just European only. So I think that is a little bit more of an important shift that is occurring. One of the things I want to talk about was when it comes to like having voice in terms of being able to speak about, Gaza and the Palestine and all these other like issues that we have within the Muslim realm. And it's not to say that we don't have news sources, because obviously we talked about like Al Jazeera and all these others. I'm curious, like in your experience of building this, do you feel, and we can agree, well, I don't want to say, but in my perception of understanding, if any sort of country owns a particular news station, they're incentivized for their agenda. And that's not to say if it's positive or negative, but everyone has an agenda. Do you feel like being a Western-based, last time I checked, you don't own a country.
He's like, yet.
Yeah, not yet. Yeah, they're building an island in the south of Dubai. A lot of sand. Do you feel like, in your experience, that kind of gives you an ability to be a little bit less biased of telling the story?
Because I've got like kind of the mix of both kind of thing, right?
Well, one thing to clarify is he's not telling the story, right?
Well, right. But I mean, at the same time, though,
he's fact-checking the story.
Like,
that's kind of the way I'm saying
correct.
it.
But like you are saying that, right? But I'm just saying for like every person who doesn't know you, who comes on News Corp, right? They would come with.
Are you saying News Corp or
Corp? Corp. C-O-R-P.
That makes me Rupert Murdoch, because News Corp is owned by Rupert Murdoch. Like Sky, like Daily Mail and a bunch of like his newspapers.
It's NewsCord with a D, right?
Yeah, with a D.
NewsCord.
So,
okay.
That one letter changes me from.
Oh man, dyslexia would be harmful. So yeah, going back to like NewsCord. Yeah. So when it comes to that, do you feel like in that experience? Because for me, at least my perception, right, it makes you less biased. But do you feel in building this out, that's kind of also been the experience, or not so much from like other people who've kind of given you feedback?
Yeah, so like absolutely. I think even pointing out the bias, you get accused of being biased,
right?
So, for calling out the bias. So, and I am biased. I'm biased against genocide. I'm biased against the killing of children. So like inherently, as a person, I am biased.
Right.
Like I've made a decision in my mind of who is committing the worst crimes I've ever seen in my life versus who's suffering, right? In terms of, now, by the way, when you talk about a different topic, which isn't Palestine, this is when you see actually, even though it feels like the world is divided over Palestine, so many people are united over Palestine. As soon as you talk about a different topic, that's when you're like, wow, like you really can't please everyone. And I think it's a really difficult thing, and that's why, as you kind of said there as well, we always need to maintain that, look, we're just trying to show you both sides and show you, like, kind of make it obvious, and hopefully if you're like a well-intentioned person, you can make a conclusion like, wow, okay, this is messed up, why is the BBC hiding this? So yeah, as I said, me as a person, I'm biased. The platform we're building out tries to be unbiased and just do objective comparisons, but the storytelling element, and as we go beyond just doing differences, and as we kind of increase our distribution, I think naturally we'd want to do more like exclusives and editorials, and kind of become basically a news outlet in a way. But I don't want to just be a news outlet. I think we can be more than that. But ultimately, I think that becomes really important. Like, how do we be really honest with our journalism? Yeah, that's something I've not solved yet. This is the next part of the journey, which I hope we can.
No, I think that's kind of incredible, being able to provide the delta, but also having a pathway of having the opinion and editorial writings, right?
Exactly.
Because I think at least with the New York Times, there's sometimes where I'm like, wow, they're actually giving decent light and appropriate light towards like the Palestinian side of things. And I think those are usually the opinion or the editorials, right? And one of the other elements that you were kind of talking about, which I'm kind of curious to learn about, right? Because when Facebook had a lot of the ads situation, for example, in Myanmar and doing the genocide there, and I'm curious have you been able to explore to that type of the region of the world when like the Rohingya genocide was happening? Of course, this was a little bit before October 7th. Has that been something that you've been able to find or learn more about in your journey of like going into the space of like, has this happened in other areas of the world?
Yeah, and how media has played a part. And obviously, like, there was the Rwanda case where actually, Hotel Rwanda were charged in legal action. We've not looked into the Rohingya genocide specifically, and I'll be very curious to know how the media played a part in that. Do you have any insight on that?
Yeah, there was a really... Go ahead.
Oh, it's on my bad. Go ahead.
Yeah.
He's like, no, but he's after he's got it.
Yeah, I mean, this was like a really big deal when, particularly around regulations with like Facebook marketing ads, right? And so I believe it was under the Biden or Obama era where they were able to put in a little bit more restrictions and regulations on ads. And there's a whole documentary on YouTube about it. And I apologize for not being able to fully recall this, but there's like a lot of reputable sources online that talk about this, and even interviews with folks in Myanmar or Burma, and interviewing them like, yeah, like a lot of the ads that I get on my Facebook is very much targeted in a negative light for these groups of people. And there's a heavy amount of like dehumanization, and everyone is always on their phone, right? Whether it be in the West or even in Asia. And so that's constantly what they were being fed. And it did play a large role. And I believe from like third-party sources like the Human Rights Watch and things like that, they do talk about it in length and done a decent amount of investigation on this particular topic. And it was one of the first like case studies about Facebook marketing ads being used to perpetuate a certain narrative that incentivized violence towards a particular ethnic group. And then, of course, I mean, Bangladesh was one of the largest receivers of Rohingya refugees during the crisis. And so I'm just kind of curious if we did like backwards archival tracking on that and seeing what it would yield or what it would bring about.
It'd be very interesting. Yeah, maybe that's something I could focus on, because I think like in terms of the analysis pieces we've done and how the news has portrayed the different issues, one thing we did do, which I'm sure you guys heard about in the States, is the UK riots, the race riots last year. Do you guys recall? Yeah. So
know a little bit about it, but not too much. So
yeah, and that was like kind of, oh gosh, I always mix up the two towns. Is it Southport or Stockport? I think it's Southport, near Liverpool, where 5 girls were brutally murdered. Please fact check me on that. They were stabbed to death by a young man, but then there was like misinformation online immediately after it saying it was a refugee. And then this, obviously the far right, like individuals who have a huge following on X, they started saying, look, enough is enough. These immigrants, like, they're doing too much. Let's go and go take to the streets. And the problem is, all of this was based off of disinformation. You got a bunch of racists that are on the streets, and they're doing it for the wrong reasons. Like the catalyst was based off of not fact. So the way the media covered this, I think, was really interesting. Like, I recall a specific example where the BBC kind of had a headline of, like, UK Muslims take to the streets to retaliate or something. Because, like, you know, there's a lot of Muslims in the UK, right? And they were like, you can't just riot on the streets and try to attack the vulnerable people in our communities, burn our mosques. Like, what do you think this is? So they're out on the streets. And, you know, obviously now it becomes a confrontation type thing. It's not just, you know, one-sided riot. It's people defending themselves. And then the BBC headline was like, far-right rioters take on the streets as UK Muslims defend themselves, or something like that. But the image used was of like a brown man who had, looked scary with the bandana on or whatever. So it's kind of like immediately it shows who the perpetrator, like, it makes you think, okay, these guys are doing the attacks and whatever. So that was another area. And I think actually, like, in terms of just Islamophobia overall, I think the BBC specifically, this might be interesting for your audience, is they've got a weird obsession with Zamzam water. Like, they've made like 4 articles spanning back to like the 1960s. So I dug through the archives where they're just like talking trash about Zamzam water. Whoa. And they're saying like it's contaminated and stuff. And it's like the weirdest, like, why have you covered this 4 times across 4 decades? Where it's constantly been debunked by like the local authorities there who do like health inspection. Like, you can imagine in like Saudi Arabia and Mecca, like how often they check and make sure Zamzam water is pure and clean. So the whole thing's absurd, but I mean, you know, that's just one thing about, you know, what are they doing there? What's the strategy there?
I mean, Orientalism, again, runs deep in the silliest ways and manners, right? Like, I mean, when you're talking about like Islamophobia, like right now, Zohrani Mamdani, who's running for mayor in New York City against Cuomo, and currently is leading in the polls.
Really? He's leading now?
Yes, by like almost like a point or point and a half.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, inshallah.
That would be incredible.
Yeah. Wow. But one of the things that they recently like published was like a headshot of him, right? On like Cuomo, and then saying all his negative things. And they AI generated him having a thicker beard, right? It's just to kind of like incentivize like Muslim, socialist, Democrat, right?
Well, first of all, there's nothing wrong with having a longer beard.
Absolutely, nothing wrong with
secondly,
it.
Like, why fixate?
But I mean, like, that's like, you know, the narrative, right? It's like, he's and it's like in a grizzly beard and things like that. And so, I mean, it's silly, and I mean, this kind of brings up a really important thing as we're entering this era pretty heavily is AI, right? I mean, the story that you said was fake news, and I feel like being able to fabricate images or videos even to tell a certain narrative, and I mean, people will get sparked really quickly and then run with it before waiting for something to happen, right?
Yeah, it's a really scary time. I think like right now, I feel like we've gone beyond the point of not being able to discern between reality and AI, because like I think even 3 months ago you could tell like, okay, this is AI generated, and even now maybe you can, but sometimes people get caught out. And actually, unfortunately, yes, there is that side of the misinformation where they try to do harmful, like almost it's like the modern day what's it called in the caricatures, it's like the modern
yes.
But there's also people that are producing, for example, particularly in Gaza, in the genocide, there's AI generated like images of bodies, and like maybe they're doing it with good intentions to try to like maximize the brutality and say, look at all of this, you know, all of these people dead and the blood and stuff. But it's all AI generated, and honestly, when it comes to the case of the Gaza genocide, you do not need AI to show how brutal it is. Like, the whole place has been destroyed by the occupiers, and it's, you know, this actually is the other side of the negatives of AI as well. So on both sides, I think it's bad in terms of when you combine it with trying to storytell and tell the news, because now that makes
the credibility is questions.
And the malicious people will say, oh, this is AI generated, I don't believe anything you say now. You know, that's all they're waiting for, right? And it can kill you, and it's just so harmful to the cause. And I really hope, like, inshallah, like, please, let's just stop this AI slop just pushing it out just for clicks, and it's just really harmful.
So I wanted to actually ask a question and transition a little bit, which was more along the lines of, I mean, this is an application that I can see has a lot of, inshallah, it does massive social impact, right? And it's something that is really just very objective, let's say, or the intention is to be very objective. Have you seen a lot of like resistance in this? Have you heard things publicly, or people like, or it's still too small to be like, for some of those larger players? Like, how's that climate been for you?
Well, in terms of like speaking with others in the space.
Yeah, like have there been like notable journalists that are like, oh, this is like horrible, or like some biases that you're noticing, or
So,
like, have you faced like massive resistance against? I mean, because like for example, where I'm coming from is like Boycott, for example, right? Like, very cool application, very has a lot of intention around like, okay, let's try to divest, and he's faced a lot of resistance. So I'm kind of curious, like, are you noticing that larger players are trying to construe and squeeze you in a way, or position you in a certain way, or hey, we're not there yet, or kind of what has your experience been?
So mainly due to like the action campaigns we've run, where we've called on people to say, okay, look, this is a huge bias, complain with our partners, Accountable Media, and there's another one in America, Unmute Humanity. That's how we know we have it on good account that people in these newsrooms do know about the work we're doing. They recognize, okay, these guys are kind of like watchdogs, and they're out to get us or whatever.
You're an auditing.
Yeah. They do recognize us as that. We've spoken to people at various major outlets that know about us and are quite supportive, because I think one thing we need to remember is a lot of the journalists, they see what's going on and they want to produce the truth, and there's actually in their own minds they want to stay there, because they're like, if we go, then the whole thing will be even worse. But obviously there's people in the editors and the boardrooms that are controlling these decisions, so there is that as well. So on the whole, my interactions have been positive so far. There has been one exception where an Israeli based in Israel, I forgot what Israeli outlet he works for now, is I think I-24, one of the big Israeli media outlets. He took to Twitter and did like a whole thread about us, like breaking us down and saying, this negligible outlet is saying XYZ, and then he does this like faux debunking of us. But yeah, apart from that, it's been mostly positive, to be honest. Alhamdulillah, yeah.
That's good. That's actually really good.
How did you guys take that? How did you guys handle that situation?
So to be honest, what's the startup term for that? What's it called? Product market fit. I was like, we've reached PMF here.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I didn't want to say. I was like, I feel like you just won the Oscar of truth.
It's a badge of product. You got an Israeli outlook.
That's when you know you're doing something right.
Yeah.
So alhamdulillah,
You email him like, hey, keep this up. Honestly, this is the feedback we need.
Yeah. Actually, let's see how many of your followers agree or disagree. Give me the percentage on that stat.
And by the way, honestly, it genuinely is a good thing, because that's how you break out of the echo chambers.
Absolutely.
I feel like sometimes I'm talking to my family on Instagram, like everyone is on the same page. And it's like, what is this? Like, we're in echo chambers. So like, okay, fair enough, we're growing, but like, we need to break out, man. And that's actually the most important thing.
So I'm going to take this a little bit different approach. So this has been very heavily on news and really motivated by like the genocide that's going on. Have you thought about like different vertical? I mean, I think you alluded to this, but have you thought about like different verticals or focuses? Like, have you thought about like, okay, what is the impact of what people are saying about oil and gas, like particularly right now, right? Like maybe someone, I'm just thinking about different use cases, right? So maybe someone can like, who's like a financial manager is like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Yeah. Like, how can I like, I mean, we don't really do this, but like, how can I hedge my bet on like commodity oil? Trading. Yeah, commodity trade, or like whatever those people do.
He's a business guy.
Well, look, here's my view, right? Like sometimes you have a massive challenge and a problem that you want to solve, and there's a lot of assumptions associated with it, and so you want to start with validating as many of those that economically make sense so that you can reach scale and grow. And so, like, to me, it's like, I'm really actually surprised to hear that you haven't faced a lot of resistance on this. I still have a question about like, okay, is this monetization? Is this a good monetization path? Are you facing those types of challenges? To me, you have to find like a good fit that, it's a good product market fit, it's a good problem, and then I can get enough money to focus on my main goal or my whatever I'm trying to objectively solve at a massive scale. So you kind of have to break the layers down. And like the way I kind of think about it is I did I was doing like some research on Amazon. And Amazon in 1999, their thought process was like, or whatever exact date it was. But like they were like basically like in the early days, they were like, we think people are going to buy stuff on the internet. That's no different than pet.com, which was ridiculed in that time period. But what did Amazon do different is they said, okay, let's find a non-perishable good. Let's find something that just tests that people will buy something online, because there's a lot of logistics around it. There's like warehousing that you have to figure out. If it's perishable, there's more complexity there. User behavior needs to be tested. If people are willing to purchase and trust something online with the credit card info, how is shipping logistics? What are the costs of shipping? There's a lot of things to test. But they basically were like, strategically, we're going to focus on non-perishable goods, high exchange value, which is books, because people exchange books all the time. So they basically said, okay, we'll focus on like shipping food products later or the complex stuff later. Let's just focus on this niche. And then as they validated, they were like, okay, there's transactions, and they built, and they kind of became this middle market player, and then they continue to grow. But in the early stages, like I think many people miss, like, okay, how can you take your product and your vision, which we all believe in, and how can you like transform it in a way that it's valuable for the long-term goal, but also gives you enough runway and profitability to like, find your way to continue to build the product out further. So that's a little bit of a long-winded way to give a little bit more insight to where my question is coming from. But like, there's certain, I would say, financially driven like biases in the market as well, right? So I'm kind of curious, like, is that something you've thought about? Is that I want to first say, like, I really commend like the meaningful work. I want to just make sure it's sustainable as well, and something that you can do for like 5 years. So that's the pure intention that I'm asking this question from.
And it's really important, because like this is obviously front and center of my mind now. It's like, how can I do this forever, or as long as I live, right, or until I want to retire? Inshallah. Because it's been 2 years and it is tiring. Like, I still work full time, full disclosure. So it's like, balancing it all, it can get really stressful. How can I keep it going? And it needs to be my full-time job for me to be able to keep it going, and it needs to be financially sustainable. So this monetization element is crucial. And the stock market idea, like, I've had that people suggest that to me multiple times, because it makes sense. Because it's like maybe a modern day take on a Bloomberg machine. Not as good, but like,
just find how many articles say Pelosi on it, and then he'll be there.
Exactly that. Just find.
But not anymore. We're banning that, right?
But ultimately, I think a lot of our offshoot products, or like mini pivots into different areas, will be based off of, okay, we've got this incredible treasure chest of data, well, how can we make use of it? That's one way to do it. Another way is reports, like meta reports on across
also
time.
Like selling those or giving like a custom like
something like that.
Got it.
So these are all avenues to pursue. There is also, like, I was approached by a journalist. I said, look, like, I think your technology just needs some small adaptations, and it can be like this tool that investigative journalists use to like reach out to people, like find out who the primary sources are from other news source, from like other articles, and be able to grab their LinkedIn contact details and so on and so forth. I mean, he had a lot of cool ideas around that, but it did get me thinking around, potentially a product for journalists. I think first and foremost, one like really quick and easy win to see if this could be sustainable was to just make it possible for people to donate. So we've got tons of features on the app, such as like headline analysis, like really niche features where most people won't care. And we were thinking another feature is like comparing one source versus the other. It's like, I only really care about Al Jazeera versus CNN. And obviously that costs like extra like processing, because we have to do that on the fly just for you. So we could have locked all of this behind memberships and see if we can do like a freemium business model. I didn't want to do that, because I feel like, especially given the mission we're on, as soon as we do that, we've now changed to offering a service, and people will hold us to account for it. If the service is rubbish, they're going to be like, I'm paying, £5 a month for this, or $5 a month. Like, what's going on? What's the crack here? But if we're just doing donations, I think people see that as, okay, these guys are trying to build, they're on a huge mission, let's try to get behind them. And alhamdulillah, as soon as we launched, and we've not gone crazy on like Twitter with an emotional story saying donate to us, because I feel like there's more important causes to donate for, like, don't get me wrong, but it's on our app, so it's for high intent people that have downloaded the app. Once they've logged in, there's like a dismissible banner saying donate. And alhamdulillah, we've had around a few £100 now coming in. It's now over 1,000 just from doing a soft launch over the past few months, whilst our app numbers are still modest. So you can imagine now, if we go back to the funnel, that's like the bottom of the funnel where they've actually paid. You know, if we've got 5,000 downloads, or now like it's approaching 6.5k downloads on the app, and you've got, you know, a few £1,000s, I think that's quite a nice funnel. So if we can grow that, then potentially that's a path to sustainability, because our infrastructure costs stay relatively flat, because we're already spending a lot of money on getting all of the news sources. If we even 10x our user base, our costs are not going to increase, because we've already processed all of these articles. So it's just about nailing that funnel, man.
Interesting.
Yeah,
that's
we just gotta
amazing.
nail that, and inshallah people will say, okay, yeah, let me support, and then more people, and then that is essentially all we need. But potentially donations aren't the final solution. Like, I think we still probably do.
So
need to
currently
explore.
it's a little bit like the Wikipedia model,
Maybe,
right?
yeah,
like
yeah, I
a
guess so, yeah.
yearly donation, and then
Yeah.
that's kind of what keeps it free.
And a lot of media outlets actually, they
Yeah.
rely on that, like especially the alternative ones, they rely on donations to run. And it works, right? But I think maybe if you want to scale to the next level, then that's when that probably is not enough. You
Yeah.
need another step. Yeah.
I certainly think there's enough passionate people that, you know, it's actually a testament that without a monetization model figured out, there's still this many people that really care about this, right? Like, I always get concerned with sustainability, and I don't mean like a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year time. I'm thinking like a 10 years, 15 years, right? Like, and then maybe you need to expand this. Like, so to me, it's like, I think that there's got to be some medium way to do it. I don't know, something to think about.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And, you know, there's...
I would say, okay, here's a suggestion.
You
Here's
could
a
also
suggestion.
spin it to like another company, right? It doesn't have to be under NewsCord.
Well, I think
right?
the underlying thing that he said, which makes sense, I would say is worth validating or worth asking people. But like basically, if you make it a service, it's a service regardless. But if you make it like
paid service.
a paid service, then it basically adds in a lot of incentive considerations. The perception of that incentive, your you know, whether you are or not is beside the question, but like how it's perceived, the expectations around it.
Yeah.
Some of that's good, some of that's bad, right? Like, I think like one of the things that I tell early founders is like, if someone's not paying for your product, well, this is a little bit different, but if someone's not paying for your product, then you haven't tested if that's still an assumption that's out there. So you haven't tested if someone's willing to pay for your product. I actually think for you, someone is willing to pay for your product. And the question is just more so who it is and does it make sense? Because you have like this barrier gate that, you know, the problem with getting the truth out is not money. Actually, in fact, money is the problem that actually is stopping and adding that gate, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, to me, it's like, I would say my suggestion that I was coming back to is maybe ask some of your core users that you have in a survey and be like, hey, ask some detailed questions like, hey, do you think this is something that you would find worth paying for in some capacity, like a membership fee? Do you think that would change your perception about it? Do you think that, like, what are concerns that we should think about? Because, like, maybe if you ask, like, 30 users, you might be surprised with, like, yeah, they might just say, like, oh, yeah, we'll pay $50 for this to support something like this. Same thing like going to a masjid, right? Like, you know, like every time you go, like, some people are like there, and some people just drop like, you know, a couple $100. Some people drop in like $1. Some people don't just go just to enjoy the communal service. So I would say that would be one honest suggestion. Normally I don't give people advice on the podcast, but the reason why is because I think it's really
Anybody listening can get that advice too.
Yeah, I mean, I think
right?
it's really, really meaningful work, right? Like, I really, really think it's awesome, and you know, inshallah it's successful. But that's kind of my thoughts on it.
Yeah, inshallah, and thank you for that. I think that's really useful, and I think that's why we have the like support thing, like where you can donate. But yeah, you're saying like directly go out to the users and tell, instead of just having it like somewhere in the app where they stumble upon it.
Yeah, like if you have
go
some,
directly,
if you've got like 6K users or 7K users like on the application, see like who the top 20 are or the top 50 are, and talk to every single one of them.
Yeah.
Right, like that is your core group of like who's using your application more, whether it's like I don't know how you track it, but like maybe it's time usage or number of queries or whatever, right? But that way you can see, like, you can learn from the experiences of like what each individual person is saying first, right? Then you can go and add in like, hey, would you pay for this? What are other features that you would like? Stuff like that.
I had a question. I think this is, well, I have many questions, but I think one thing that I was kind of wondering, like, obviously this information has been existing for a very long time, right? At least from a Arab or Middle Eastern or Muslim perspective, right, of what's happening. And this information is kind of the same and over again. That being, people are dying in a brutal way, right? That's from a consumer side. From a creator side, that means you're probably seeing that information way more, probably constantly, far more than me, even though I'm actively reading, right? Because it's a 24/7 cycle for you. How are you staying mentally grounded, right? Like, are you able to stay hopeful? Like, all of that, how are you tackling? Because I think, a lot of folks that I talk to, they kind of hit this level of defeatism, right? But I'm kind of curious, because you're taking that feeling and putting action, but how are you kind of battling that?
I think, yeah, sure, that's a deep question. Yeah, it's true. Like, it can get, I mean, obviously it's nothing compared to what they're going through, right? But, seeing it all the time is crazy, like what's going on, right? It's heartbreaking to see, but and you have to ensure that because you see it so much, you don't become desensitized to it, and you just think, these are just numbers, or you just like seeing blood should never be normal. Like seeing dismembered bodies and babies beheaded should not be something we just swipe through. Like and that probably is happening a lot now because people are just getting so used to it. And obviously in terms of like us seeing it through a screen, it almost feels silly to say that's mentally like fatiguing, because these are real people that actually, just a few in closer to where we originally come from, it's happening to them there. So it's like, how can we here be complex? But let's be honest. So obviously there is mental fatigue, right? With that said, and honestly, I don't have a solution for it, man. It's like the cause is too important to then say, okay, I want to take a break. Right now, this is my mindset. I think breaks are important. I think we should go and take a step away, and this is where your team comes in clutch, right? So I'm using American terminology. Clutch.
We'll take it.
This is where your team comes in, and they and they take over for you, right? So like, alhamdulillah, like I've got two amazing, or three now actually, amazing content creators that are helping with the Instagram posts now. Before it was all me, and that's when it would get too exhausting, and we're only human, right? So it's like, okay, now I'm taking a break. I'm just going to take the weekend off. I'm not going to look at the news at all, actually. Or, you can't really avoid it, but like I won't be as immersed. This is where the rest of your team comes in. So this is why without a team, it's a lot harder. Like I see some people that are doing it all alone. I honestly don't know how. It must be so, you just go crazy, right? Seeing it all the time. So yeah, that's one way of staying, on top of it consistently and being sane. But honestly, yeah, as I said, it's nothing compared to like what the people there in Gaza, in Palestine, are going through in themselves.
Do you feel like a lot of, being able to have all this, well, not like, it's not like you're storing all the information in your head, but going through all this information and knowing all these perspectives, even when you're talking in Muslim spaces, do you feel frustrated with like what people know or what they don't know, or your perception of what progress would look like? How are you handling that in terms of like within our local circles of helping other Muslims to take the right step forward to, benefit the cause? Yeah,
so I think it's a really interesting one. I think, I have actually been genuinely frustrated at times, especially recently with the inaction of actually people, like, some people around me, even like Muslims that should, like, I think a lot of us, some of us, including me, like, nothing's been the same since October 7th, since the genocide started. Like, I can't see anything the same anymore. Like, everything feels so connected to me. Everything feels so unjust and that we need to do something. Always like feeling like, okay, how can I take action beyond even just what I'm doing at NewsCord? Like, how can I take it further? And everyone should be. Imagine if the entire ummah was like that. Let alone, you've got, for example, some protests in London where there's hundreds of thousands turn up, but like sometimes there's hardly any Muslims around. It's like, these are your brothers and sisters. Like, this is what's sad to see. I think there is that sense of, I'm not going to take action, there's no point. Or there's even that sense of, I'm just going to make my dua, that's enough. But actually, I think it is our duty to help in any way we can. So there is that frustration, yeah, definitely. But then on the positive side, you also see certain things which motivate you so much. So like, just a few weeks ago, was it last week? It will blur us together now with the Freedom Flotilla.
Oh yes, yeah.
I don't know about you guys, but that was incredibly motivating to me. It's like, look at these like 12 people. They just went on a boat and they, tried to break the siege. And
the British Parliament.
This is Centre for Media Monitoring. They're a group of.
How are they correlated with the?
So they're a group run by Muslim Council of Britain, or Muslim Council for Britain, and then they essentially embarked on trying to quantify the media's complicity in genocide, or at least quantify how impartial they really are, because the BBC prides itself on being impartial. That's kind of their number one thing they say, but also to record stuff and kind of do some on the ground journalism, which is always fun. And yeah, it was incredible. Like they also got the BBC executive news editor to turn up, Richard Burgess, and
wow.
Yeah, at first it was surprising. It was like, oh, he's coming, so maybe he'll be open to it. That's what I was thinking. But then very quickly I realized, okay, this guy's just deflecting and distorting and denying. And then I realized, okay, this is a box ticking exercise. So I think he was clearly put on this assignment by the BBC to be there to say, oh, look, we're very fair. We even listened to you.
He was present.
Yeah, we were present. But I mean, come on, like you cannot in good faith immediately reject a report and deflect and deny the gravity of a report based off of 35,000 news feeds. Like, this is, if you were truly on a quest to be impartial, you would welcome a report like this, because it's like, wow, thanks for keeping us honest. Like, if that's genuine, in fact, they would have a team internally that does it, because it's like, oh, we take this impartiality thing really seriously. We need a team to quantify this.
Well, he treated it like a headline, it seems like, right?
Yeah,
there's no desire to.
Yeah,
it really shows the bias in that.
Yeah, and it's like you immediately reject these metrics, this data, without even showing your team and having your team at least investigate it. It was quite sad to see, but I think if anything, it's validation that we kind of need to escalate our efforts. There's one thing trying to convince the media class that what they're doing is messed up. The other much more likely option at this point, given the way that yesterday happened, is actually there's no point in trying to talk to them. Let's try to replace them. Let's try to build things, build media outlets that are better than what they're doing, that does real journalism. So I think that's definitely where my mindset is at right now. And in terms of what we're doing at NewsCord, how can we try to do that? How can we facilitate that, or inshallah be that? How can we be the new way that the news is consumed, so that people don't rely on the BBC anymore? I think one thing that was really interesting about what Richard Burgess said was, bizarrely, one of the justifications for why they are covering the genocide less, because that was one of the questions. He said that because people aren't tuning in as much to the Gaza articles. So they're saying, we're going to listen to what the audience wants. So if people aren't clicking on those articles, so essentially he admitted that it's a numbers game for them.
Right.
But actually also...
Is that true, though?
Well, I mean...
Are we just assuming that...
Well, look, people are going to do what they're incentivized to do.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying, like, it was...
Are those numbers true that he's
correct,
saying?
Yeah.
Let's say they are.
Okay.
One thing, correlation...
Causation isn't correlation? Yeah.
I've been using that term so many times.
Oh, good.
As a data scientist, I should have that on lock. But anyway,
it's a tricky alliteration.
Yeah, what you said. For real, because he is assuming that people are not tuning in because they've lost interest in Gaza. But actually, maybe people are not tuning into the BBC because they've seen over the past 2 years how bad they are. So actually, he's focusing on the wrong metric there, because he doesn't realize the damage that has been done to the BBC over the past 2 years. If anything, this report is trying to help the BBC. It's like in 5 years, let's say, how is the BBC going to be remembered for this? Because this isn't like back in the day. Like, we've got, for example, Centre for Media Monitoring. You've got us, because we will keep barking at them saying, remember what you were doing during the genocide. I mean, imagine how bad they're gonna look forever now. It's stamped in history. It's not like you can't in this digital era you're just gonna be exposed now.
You can't really undo it. And I think a group of BBC journalists, both anonymously and I think publicly, have admitted that they were forced to change certain verbiage with titles surrounding the genocide, right? And I think there was also a piece, I forget where, I think it was like 60 Minutes or something, where they interviewed essentially somebody like in Mossad, right? And they were, it was all anonymous as much as possible, but it was from a reputable source. And they talked about like, yeah, we have agents in pretty much all major news, including the BBC and all these other things, right? So it's not really unknown per se, right? Like it is something that does exist, and something we have to be cognizant of when we are, reading certain things and who are the decision makers and influences that are maybe happening in the channel. But that's a great point that you brought up, right? Just because his understanding or perspective, or potentially an scapegoat, is that, oh, it's because of this, that's why they're not tuning in. Well, now that you've stopped talking about it, have your numbers increased or have they not?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. I think, I don't know what it is. Is it complacency? I think it's not complacency. It's more complicity. Like, they know what they're doing. Like Hind Rajab was shot 355 times by Israeli forces at as close as 12 meters away from an Israeli tank. There's a 5-year-old girl. For the BBC headline to then say, "Girl found dead, no perpetrator named, no use of the word killed." You know what you're doing there. That's not a mistake. And by the way, yesterday, this was showing up on the screen, like Hind Rajab, the headline that they had. And no retort for that. It was just deflection. I mean, these guys are politicians. Like, for this BBC executive news editor, he spoke like a politician. He knew expertly how to evade questions, how to deflect. Nothing about that was journalism. So it shows you where their priorities are. Their priorities are, this is politics, but we serve the empire. Yeah. What do you think this is? We're not going to start being honest about the genocide, right? So
there's a meme that I saw. This is terrible, but it's like, it was talking about, are you a Lord of the Rings fan by chance?
No, unfortunately.
No. Okay. That's gotcha. Are you Middle Earth guy at all?
I know Ron I've watched it, but I would say I would be a disservice to say I'm a fan. Gotcha.
Our producer, who's not here, he's a huge Lord of the Rings fan, and as am I. But Palantir, which I'm sure you're familiar with, right? So Palantir kind of comes from essentially this theme from Lord of the Rings, which is like an all-seeing eye, right? And it's like an evil entity, right? And the irony was like a lot of these, tech people like that of like Peter Thiel and all of them, the meme was like, it's a while that people watch Lord of the Rings and said, whoa, I want to be like the dark elves, like the evil people. And so it's like the Empire and all these things, like the movies that we watch, whether it be Star Wars or Lord of the Rings, there's all these like themes of resistance and like fighting against the oppressor, right? Or protecting yourself from the oppressor, and all these elements, which is very much apparent in our lives. But depending,
parallels.
It's
that's crazy. I did not
real.
know Palantir's source was that.
The name, is essentially.
Wow, why would they do
from
that?
Lord of the Rings?
I
mean, I think
maybe
that
there's like layers of abstraction. I mean, sometimes they just want right in your face, right?
Well, I mean, that's the thing. It is right in your face, and like from a Muslim perspective, I think, at least for me, it's like sometimes the truth can be literally in front of you, and when Allah talks about like, if it's not in your heart, it's not in your heart, right? So it can be clearly written in front of you, and you could even believe it, right? But because of your fear of the dunya and not Allah, you will convince yourself that it's fine. It's convenient, right?
Exactly.
And I think in these situations I think all these politicians, like, they know the truth. There's nothing to be convinced about. Is that they're incentivized in different ways that maybe they're more fearful of that than, right?
Yeah, and I mean, it's right in front of us as well. Like, especially in America with AIPAC, where they're proud of it. Like, they're proud of funding the senators and the.
Well, they admit it on Twitter too, right?
I mean, the whole thing is just ridiculous.
Yeah, it's like
it's kind of crazy that a foreign country is boasting that they control that many senators or influence, let's say.
Right.
Imagine if Russia did that. Like, it'll be the biggest controversy of all
time. I mean, that was the whole Trump dialogue, more or less, right? But
I can't remember where I got this information from, so I don't have the full details of the research.
We should start having like a laptop. Maybe we can like quickly find things. What do you think? I know Ansari podcast does that.
Yeah.
Might be a good addition.
But basically, like, for APAC, you're assigned like an APAC representative or agent per senator.
Wow.
Or per race.
Yes.
Something along those lines.
Yes.
I can't remember how I know this is true. Like, I haven't looked into it myself, but maybe I think one of the people that was in office was mentioning this. Basically, they run the agenda and talking points through them occasionally. I'll say occasionally because I don't know the duration, and then also like in terms of like helping support certain candidates or not, it's like any other political or PAC group, right? But it's definitely one of the most influential. So it's right there.
Yeah.
And it's
and they even give you like a direct line to like an Israeli like representative essentially. To like essentially have Q&A or whatever it is. Like every representative gets one. It's like a weird customer service.
Like the client.
You brought up a great point, right? Like in terms of non-Muslims being there and fighting for this cause and being active about it. I think recently with the I don't know what the proper term is, like the Freedom Flotilla, but the one that was kind of migrating through Egypt, like by land. Yeah, and they were all rejected and now currently getting deported from the Egyptian border. And there's this viral video. I don't know if you saw it.
I actually don't know the details about this.
Well, and it's like multiple people from like hundreds of countries like flying in and marching towards Gaza to provide aid, and a lot of them made it to the border of Egypt, and they would not let them go in. And on the topic of non-Muslims, there's a viral video that was being shared. Even a lot of sheikhs shared it, which this man, like English speaking, I believe, who is like yelling and pleading with this Egyptian border guard, being
it's
like
very emotional.
Yeah, being like, they're dying. There's children that are dying. Like, you're Muslim. Do it for Islam. Do it for, like, this is a non-Muslim reminding a brother, a Muslim about Tawheed, right? About Allah. And subhanAllah, it gives me chills now because on the Day of Judgment, we have to answer. We will be given, like, you were given a reminder, right? And I think for me, it's shameful. It's shameful for the ummah to witness that.
Yeah, so true. That was a very powerful clip, and I think this is exactly it. Obviously, I think, to be honest, part of it is by design. Like, this has been in the making for 80, 90 years now, but since before the establishment of the Israeli entity. Like, we've seen how these Arab leaders over time were progressively made, I guess, like weaker and weaker, or at least to be more on the normalizing side and helping the Americans.
Bending the knee, as they say in Game of Thrones.
exactly. Yeah. So I think it's by design. I think, what can I say? It was, I saw this powerful thing where they were saying, like, wherever the convoy gets turned around, that's the Israeli border. So
yeah, wow.
So, yeah, subhanAllah.
SubhanAllah. I mean, I think it is, I always say, like, it's, do you feel like it's those in power? Like, I think there is this narrative that exists, and I'm curious what you think and what your experience has been of, in these places, it's like, okay, maybe the government entity may lean this way, but the people themselves actually align differently.
Absolutely.
Has that been the experience as well for you?
I think so. Are we talking specifically about Egypt and the Egyptians?
Well, it could be Egypt, could be Jordan.
I think
a lot of these
like
Gulf
the Arabs
states.
and I think obviously I'm not Arab. I'm Kurdish in Iraq. I think it's nuanced. Like, I think, to be honest, I do see like Kurds that don't care at all, and I see Arabs that don't care at all, that are not potentially.
Well, the Kurds your ethnic group has gone through a lot of atrocities too.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And that doesn't get a lot of light, unfortunately, and a lot of that happened by Muslims, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, sorry.
No,
I just wanted to acknowledge that's a story that's not told.
Absolutely. The Kurdish, the Anfal operation, which was shamefully named after a surah in the Quran by Saddam Hussein. when he attacked the Kurds. And by the way, during this time, Saddam was an ally of America, of the US. So the US allowed this to happen. They green-lighted it. They green-lighted the use of chemical weapons on Kurdish villages in Iraq. And at the time, they were allies, and they were allies against Iran. And then the script flipped, and suddenly, it is all very relevant now. It's like history repeats itself, because obviously the same playbook is being repeated with Iran. And it's like they said for Iraq, like, yeah, you guys can't have weapons of mass destruction, even though 20 years ago they allowed Operation Anfal to happen, where they rained down, like, carpet bombed chemical weapons. 20 years ago, like, they were on, they were there. They green lighted it. They were allied with Saddam Hussein. So all of this is an excuse. Sorry, this is a bit of a massive tangent, isn't it?
This is kind of the intention of dialogue.
Yeah. But honestly, everything's connected, man. This is why we keep going on tangents.
Absolutely,
everything's connected. So, subhanallah. And I think, what were we saying about the inaction of the potentially the Arabs? I think the Jordanians, I don't know, there was a powerful clip the other week where they were all out on the streets protesting for Palestine, saying we're also like we're oppressed, like we can't speak, we can't do anything, like our leaders have betrayed us. So I think absolutely, like, it's the majority of the blame is with the leaders of the Arab world. It's not the Arabs themselves, like the Egyptians. They are all for Palestine. Like when I went to Cairo 2 years ago, like they were all with, or a year ago, sorry, they were all with the Palestinians. Like it's close to their heart. And obviously there's a lot of orphans and refugees from Gaza, and they're doing incredible work there, like it's despite the government crackdown, doing it basically underground, running orphanages, because the government doesn't want that. Yeah. So it's like, it's incredible the oppression the Arabs are quietly facing in terms of, like, not being able to speak out, so I think maybe the Khalij is a bit different. I don't know much about that. I've seen online anecdotally, so I don't want to generalize, but where, like, you see Khalijis don't seem to be caring. Like, when I say Khalij, I mean the Emirates. They don't seem to be alarmed about what's going on to their brothers and sisters in Palestine. But I don't know, I don't want to generalize.
Well, I did see an article that's about around January of this year. I want to say at least this episode's in 2025, but it was about essentially a settler group from occupied Palestine or Israel who were visiting Abu Dhabi, or I believe Dubai at the time, meeting with the Emiratis, right? And so, in my head, I'm like, man, this is a full-on settler group, who's coming in, who's being, dined and taken care of. So it is something where it just causes, your mind being like, what is going on, right? Like, and it does make you feel a little bit, at least for me as an individual at times, very powerless and just pent up, being like, Allah, what do I do? What do I do? But yeah, I mean, it's great that you're being able to take action and really make movement out of this and really direct it in a positive way. But yeah, no, so I appreciate you kind of sharing that, even though it was a bit of a tangent.
For us, like, some of it is like, I think some of those tangents are relevant, right? Like, that's the kind of purpose of this. Or we want to have a conversation of just,
not just EBITDA.
It's not just purely I mean, there's definitely a business and a Muslim focus, but at the end of the day, like, we want to showcase, like, the background of why, like, I think it just justifies, like, the reasoning of your product, right? Your service, what you're trying to solve, right? So no, I'll basically say, like, I really think it's meaningful work. If there's any way that I know Naveed or I can help, we'll definitely.
You guys have helped by give me this platform to just, like, talk about it. So I really appreciate, like, just, like, a lot.
Yeah, inshallah, one day it's a massive platform. We're working on it, but
we'll bring you right back. We'll bring you back again.
No, and I mean, I just want to say thank you. I think it's really meaningful work, and inshallah, like, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant you success in the journey and keep your intentions pure. And if it's something that brings, it's actually one of my really good friends and one of our guests. There's something that he says in the venture that he was doing. It basically was like, if this venture brings me closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's a success. Yeah, regardless of like the outcome from a worldly perspective. Like if it brings you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's beautiful, it's a success.
Yeah, so true.
And I think we've literally quoted it in almost every single podcast.
Honestly,
because
it's
that good.
Yeah.
Just claim it as your own quote.
Yeah.
No.
It's recorded. It's recorded. Yeah.
No, I wouldn't do that. No, and he's a
can't
good friend
copyright
of mine
it.
too.
You'll find us like. Our analysis has found Caravan lied.
I'll expose it.
Yeah.
We'll go to Israeli 24. It's like, hey, we got
something to add to this.
Oh, yeah, that's so funny. Well, Nima, thank you so much for joining the Caravan podcast and telling us a little bit about NewsCord and the mission that you're on and what you're building. If you had any last words of how our viewers or us, how we can come support you, what would be the best thing?
Yeah, so thanks for having me, first of all. Please, guys, try the app or at least check out our Instagram and see what you think, see if you find the way we're delivering the news valuable. And yeah, reach out. We're open to all DMs, emails, messages, feedback, because we want to build the platform for the future, the platform that brings transparency to the news.
Well, Nima, thank you so much, and everyone else, just like Khairan.